Welcome everyone, my name is Jordan. I'm here.
Welcome everyone.
Hold on,
My
let
name
me
is
stop
Jordan.
that duplication of stuff so y'all don't have to hear me talk twice. Alright, I promise we'll be here in a second. We're learning things today, just like everyone else. Bear with me. Alright, I should be able to see everything now. Again, welcome. My name is Jordan. We will be going over a quick tutorial on how to set up a simple question answer in Storyline. This is one that I kind of make myself and how I've made it before in the past. Again, this is how I would do it. It's not necessarily the right way or the wrong way. This is just a way to do it. A couple of people have asked me to show how I set these things up, so I figured I would do that for you guys and let you go. So, as you can see here, we are in Storyline. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so y'all can see. I've just started up a brand new Storyline file. There's nothing in here. I haven't even gone in and changed any of the settings, player settings or whatever. Typically what I do for these is this one I'm setting up to be in a Rise course. So the first thing I want to do is I want to edit my player. I like my Storyline files to be seamless within Rise, so I don't like my player to show at all. I tend to turn everything off. If there is a color, I tend to turn the color to white, just because it's easier to hide within within Rise itself. But I turn off all menus and controls. I turn off the players, modern or classic, doesn't matter. So long as it's on light and the menus and controls is off. Okay, then we're going to hit OK. Next thing I like to do is the slide setup. I want to make sure that I'm in a good format for running things. I tend to just go flat out 1080, 1080p, which we're going to set that as the default size and then click OK. Alright, now we have our slide set up, we have our player set up, and now we can get into the actual course itself. Now, with this, I'm just going to minimize some things so y'all can see. Something seems wrong with my slide setup. I always have to look at this one. Hold on. I do 1080p or HD, just the standard low definition graphics. And if you have to Google this, go for it. So 1080p is 1920 by 1080. That's where I'm off. I always remember the 1080, but not the 1920. Alright, there we go. We should have an HD slide. Yeah, that's what we want to see. Alright, so with this being in Rise and with your controls being turned off, this means there's a lot of things you have to do to allow the user to go from slide to slide, to go through this Storyline file outside of the menu controls. Now again, that menu control is a personal preference of mine. It's nothing that you guys have to do. If you want to keep it on there, you can. But we're going to have 3 slides total. So we're going to have what I like to call is the introduction slide. So let's just rename this here while we're here. So this is the first slide that they'll see to get them started on the quiz. Intro slide. this right here, this second slide, oops, I didn't mean to duplicate. We'll just delete that one real fast. This one right here will actually be the quiz itself, and we're going to have a quiz all on one slide. And then this right here is going to be your completion slide. Now, I will probably misspell something once or twice, so don't worry too terribly much about what it looks like. But the one thing I like to do on this slide, and because this is going in Rise, is we need to add a trigger for course completion if this quiz is going to be the thing that signifies the end user is finished with the course. Alright, so we add a trigger to the slide. It says the action is complete course, status complete passed or incomplete failed. It always defaults to complete passed. I just leave it on there. That's the trigger that Rise wants to see, and that's what we're going to give it. Okay, and then when the timeline starts on this slide, I leave that alone because there are times where you want to change this, and there are times where we can change it up and do it a different way if we want to. So we'll just click OK. Now, by default, Storyline will have your next and previous button triggers here. You don't have to worry about those. We took the menu controls off, so them being there is not going to hurt anything. It's not going to harm anything. If you just leave them alone and ignore them, they'll be fine. Okay, so now that we have all three slides defined, and we make sure we have this course completed one, next I want to go into this intro slide and introduce the end user to the quiz. So you can say something simple of, this is usually where I'll give them directions. So we want them to read the following statements carefully. Choose. We want them to select if the statement it would this is why I say I will misspell something all the time. Select if the statement will qualify as out of. Okay, we need some hyphens because out of service is a hyphenated word. Okay, let me fix this so we can still read it all together. Okay, so one thing I did possibly mention, but maybe not mentioned, is this is for an FMCSA course. So some of the terminology, like out of service for the driver, or commercial motor vehicle, or commercial trailer, some of that verbiage I'll be saying throughout the course. This information is stuff that you can actually look up for commercial motor vehicles, typically referred to as semi-trucks or big hauler vehicles that haul heavy weight items and need all that fun regulations around how they do things. So some of the terminology, if y'all have questions, please feel free to ask them if I don't explain it. I will do my best to explain what I understand, and we can follow along, and hopefully it'll make some more sense to you guys. So we want them to read the following statements carefully, select if the statement would qualify as out of service, or not qualify as out of service. And bear with me, I'm going to open up another file real fast. I have already created this. I want to save this. I really don't want to close it, so we'll cancel that. Let's go to desktop. service knowledge check. Let me see what my strict, what my instructions were for the other one, because I liked how I worded it a little bit better. And when you're wording these instructions, my best practice may not be everyone's best practice. My best practice is to put words down on a piece of paper and then come back later and then figure out if there's a better way to say it. So this is what I said in the other one. So we will use this. Oop, I didn't want to take it off. Okay, so I was following my statement correctly. So we want them to read each statement carefully and choose whether you would classify it as yes, out of service criteria, or no, not considered out of service criteria. Now there are reasonings why we want to use specific verbiage behind this. And since I'm maintaining AP, I need to up my font size a little bit. And it's mostly legal reasons why you want to dance around some of these terms. We want to classify it as yes, it would be considered out of service, or not considered out of service. And that's just to leave the gray area of this is not all inclusive. This could include this could not include this. It really just depends on how the statements are worded and read. Okay, so here's our directions. This is what we're going to end up having the users do. They're going to either click yes or no on their questions. So that's why we want to make sure we say in here, yes, it's out of service criteria, or no, it's not considered out of service criteria. So what's the next thing we need to do here? What we need to do is give the user a way to get to that next slide. Because remember, I did take out the player, so we want to make sure that they have access to get back to that player. I usually like this blue, so click to start the quiz. So we'll give them this big button, we'll format it however we want to, and we'll go over formatting a little bit later. Right now I'm not too worried about how it looks. What I want to get is the functionality out. So this right here, all I did was insert a shape. You can use buttons. There's nothing wrong with using buttons. Buttons typically give you an automatic trigger to go to do something, so you can edit the trigger on the side. I tend to like to make whatever shape, form, fashion I want it to look like, and I don't always like to be tied down to this square, this rounded square, or this super rounded square, and that's pretty much the only buttons I give. So sometimes I like to make, you can make circles, triangles, whatever you want out of here. There's always a way to change a shape into a different way of making a button. So say I wanted to use this arrow. I like arrows. Why not use an arrow? I've never changed one to an arrow before, so let's just go ahead and do this. And then we can go through the steps on how to do it. this. We're going to follow our style colors. Right now I don't have style colors down, and that's perfectly fine. If we can go in, or at a later time I can go into setting up styles and colors and fonts, and the uses of using those over just whatever defaults out of Storyline and then manually changing it. There's pros and cons in both. Okay, so we're going to decide to use this arrow because it looks really nice. I like it a lot better. So we want the user to be able to click this arrow to go to the next slide. So there's one of two ways you can do this. So one way is you can just have your arrow selected, click on triggers. Our action is going to jump to slide, next slide, and then the when is when the user clicks, and then we want it to be that right arrow one, and then click OK. So now whenever the user clicks that right arrow, they'll go next. Now I'm not going too deep into the timeline because for here we don't really have a timeline a need to mess with the timeline because everything's just going to show on the screen all at once. But here on the timeline is where you can go in here and rename some of your objects. So next button. That way you know what its use is within your course. And that is a good practice to keep up with. I will say I'm horrible about it, and I really shouldn't be. So now, how do we know this button works? So we can go up here and preview this scene. Wait just a hot minute while it does this. Alright, so you read your directions, you have your button, and you'll notice once you hover over the arrow specifically is when your mouse cursor will change from just a normal pointer to the hand showing that you can click to the next one. Now you're going to see a blank screen because we haven't put anything on that next slide, and that's perfectly fine. All we're doing there is just checking to make sure that next functionality, jump to next slide functionality, is actually working the way we intended it to work. Okay, so now we have our directions. We have our start button for them to start to click to the next screen. It does actually function as going into the next screen. Now let's go into the second screen for our quiz. Okay, here's where we will be inserting some text boxes. Okay, and I'm going to steal, go back to here. I'm going to steal the one question I have written up, and then we'll write up a couple of other questions, and we can they don't have to be accurate questions at the moment. We're just looking for some questions to add in here. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to do sets of 2 questions for 3 groups. Now, what are those 3 groups? I've already defined those groups, and I've already created icons for each of those groups. So let's go ahead and add in an image, and bear with me while I search for things because I have hotkeys and I'm trying not to use them. Okay, so let's go to our desktop. We have a quiz file, and you'll see here, for some reason these two are looking really weird, but we have 3 images right here: a CMV, a driver, and a trailer. So we want all 3 of those images in here. They're gonna be huge, and that's perfectly fine. Let's resize it to a good size. This is the trailer, so he's gonna go here. Now, one thing you will see me use a lot, and I mean a lot, is my size and position section. Now, I use a hotkey to access the size and position, which I can find that out for you real fast if you really want to know. Bear with me, this is my hotkeys. So, size and position, oh good lord, it is, and I'm on a Mac, so bear with me, it's Command Shift Enter. So on everyone else, I believe it should be Windows key Shift Enter. I am a weirdo. I'm on a Mac using parallels to access Windows. So it is possible. Alright, so back to what we're looking at here. So we're looking at the size and position window for this trailer right here. Now, I like its size. It's pretty good. What I want to get out here is the size, which is 102, 102. I write these down in a notebook. I will have tons of just random numbers out of everything. So next thing I do is I click the next one and then make sure I type in 102, 102. It resizes it to the correct sizing. I'll put it in line with this one for now, and then we'll select the last one at 102, 102. So that will have the first set, second set, and third set of questions. Give them some spacing. Now, what you can do if If you want to space them out, but storyline doesn't really help you a whole lot like PowerPoint does, and tell you, hey, here is the same distance as here. What you want to do in these cases, if you want them evenly distributed, you set your top to the right position where you want it, and you set your bottom one to the right position where you want it. This got anything in the middle, just put them in the middle somewhere. Select your bottom, select whatever's in the middle, select your top, go to Home, Arrange, Align, and Distribute Vertically. And that will evenly distribute all three of these, so you don't have to go in there and try and figure out what's what. So, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two questions. I want to line them up kind of in the middle of the truck here. I tend to use that guide line as a line to line it up, and then I eyeball it after that. So there's the first two questions kind of lined up. There's the second two, and all I'm doing here is copying and pasting. I feel like those need to go down a little bit. Now, these two, did I line them up? Yeah, I did. Okay. So now we have the set that are with the truck, the set that are with the trailer, and the set that are with the driver. So how is the end user going to know beyond the symbols which one's which? What I like to do here is you can grab another shape. You want it the same width as your circle, which, hey man, we wrote down that number. Let's use it. Width is 102. And I'm so sorry if you can hear me sniffling. It is cold here, and my sinuses do not like us. Alright, so we typed in CMV there, but we noticed that there are super huge letters. We don't want that. We want it a little bit better, and we want it bold. So there, you can see it's the CMV, which stands for Commercial Motor Vehicle. The end users that do take this quiz will know that acronym, so we don't have to worry about defining it here. That is one big thing. One of my things that I'm really a pet peeve about is if you're using an acronym, the very first time you use that acronym anywhere, no matter where it shows up, you have to define that acronym before you can use it in regular sentences. Okay, so the second set is trailer, and the next set is driver. So that means these questions will be based on the CMV. These questions will be based on the trailer. These questions will be based on the driver. Okay? I know I keep saying, okay, that's just me. We're going to move this a little bit into the entrance. Okay, so we want a question about the driver. Okay, so question for the driver I'm going to use is driver is pulled over and does not have a medical card. So one thing you will need, I will say about this one is in FMCSA information is a commercial driver needs to have a medical card on them at all times. It is similar to how their driver's license works, so it is just another documentation that they need to have. So next thing that I will say about this next question is the driver has filled out their hours of service log. So all commercial drivers are required to have a service log, logging all of their hours of service, whether it be electronic or digitally. Most of the time, they're digitally in this day and age. Okay, so this one is for a trailer question. So missing straps for tie downs. So this goes into load securement. Load securement is a big thing within commercial driving. You must have whatever you are hauling secured to the trailer so that it cannot move in any direction to a certain degree that I don't know the specifics to. So it is very important for them to have all of their straps and tie downs, and they're not missing any based on the weight or based on the object that they are hauling. So I'm going to rewrite this. Just so that there is no ifs, ands, or buts about what's going on this one. And if I type a question out and it ends up being wrong, I will correct it in post. And I'll let y'all know if anything's incorrect, because I'm going off of what I remember, and I may be misremembering something, but I'm not for sure. Okay, so for the trailer, what's another one we can do? So there is documentation that they need for the trailer. So let's say that they are missing, what do they need? They need missing pre-trip inspection for trailer. Okay, so one thing that you may not know is for a commercial driver, they have to have a pre-trip and post-trip inspection of the commercial motor vehicle they are driving and any trailer that they are hauling. So while they have to have those, that is not considered an out-of-service criteria for them. Out-of-service means that they cannot drive this vehicle whatsoever on the road. So missing a pre-trip inspection is a ticketing offense. It is not necessarily something that could potentially stop them from driving this this commercial vehicle off the inspection lot. Okay, so we're talking about steer tires. What can we say about the commercial vehicle? This is usually when I lean on my documentation for the course. But let's go ahead and say we are missing a headlamp. So the thing about the missing of the headlamp, they can miss single headlights just like in vehicles, normal vehicles. They can be missing one or two. They cannot be missing them all. So this one is again going to be one of those no's, which we are going to go over. So now we have all of our questions. We have all of our sections. Let's add some yes, no buttons. So what I like to do is I create the first one. And again, for some reason, it has got the biggest font in the world. We want to bring that down so we can read it a little bit better. And we're going to put it as bold. Now, for these, you may be tempted to set up states. Now, if you know what states are, you know that you can change colors, you can change things about an object. States are located down here next to timeline. You can change whatever it looks based on something the user does. So whether they click it, do you want it to automatically tell them it's right? Do you want them to tell them it's wrong? I'm not going to do that here simply because we will be going into button sets, so that, and I'll go over what a button set does whenever we get there. But any states and you setting up triggers to trigger different states for an object is going to change the button set functionality, and it won't work properly. So we're not going to want to do that right now. Okay, so do we like how this looks? I'm not always a fan of an outline on a shape. I know I've probably left it on a couple of them, but if it's prominent and I can see it, I don't like it. So we like the blue. It matches. We're going with a blue theme. If you don't know, I like blue. So we're going to copy and paste this one. And what we want to do is we want to line it up with the first one, but we want to give a little bit of a gap. And we want this one to say no. And we also want to remind the end user of what they're doing. So if we do OOS question mark, again, this is another one of those acronyms that they will know, the end user who takes this will know that OOS, at least in our situation, stands for out of service. And that's what we want them to ask. Is this considered out of service? Okay. So, alright. I always hate it when text boxes do that. They overlap something that I'm using. Alright, so I'm going to take these two. I know they're lined up together, but we want to make sure that they show up in the middle of that sentence right there, so that there's no misunderstanding that these two go with this one. So now let's copy and paste. What we're going to find out now is, do these line up with this one without intersecting into the top ones? Yes. Okay, so that spacing is fine for me. Let me zoom in a little bit so y'all can see this. And I may change my slide size, but I doubt it. We may just bring everything else bigger. Okay, so this is your sentence. Is this out of service, yes or no? This is your sentence. Is this out of service, yes or no? Okay, so we like that. We're going to take all four of these. We're just going to copy and paste. We're going to come down here. And that first line, I wish I had a second pointer so you can see it. It's in line with the no, because that's what I'm dragging. And it's also in line with that top sentence. It may be really hard for you guys to see this pink line in here, but I promise it is lined up with this right here. So if it's lined up here, it's going to be lined up here. Okay, so now we have the yes, no here. Now we're going to run into an issue. If you notice, these sentences are longer than this one, and so now our out of service yes, no is no longer in line with anything. So we're going to copy and paste these. And this is why I like to give myself a lot of room to do some of these. Okay, so this one's being a little bit of a mean and not allowing me to line up because it wants to sync with the top or bottom. So what I tend to do whenever those guides, those automated guides, start bothering me and not allowing me to do what I want to do, I turn on the guides themselves, and then I will set up a guide saying this is about right where I want it to line up. Is it lined up? And here it does look like it's lined up pretty well with the guide. Again, let me click off, see if y'all can see that guide any better. Yeah, y'all can now. That light blue is a little bit hard to read on the on the thing. So you see we're lined up. Well, we lined up good enough. How about that? So let's take all of this that's above it, all these yes no answers, and scoot them over to line up with that right there. So now all of these are lined up together. Okay? Looking good. Okay, these guides are now in the way. We want them to go away. Probably need to respell this one. And this is why I hate spell check. Okay, so we got our out of service, yes or no. Now, if there are cases like these where it's kind of difficult, like you have a lot of blank space here in between your question and where your answers are, and to me it may not seem ambiguous, but to you it may seem ambiguous which ones go with which. This is what I tend to do. Okay, you take bar, and you're going to want to mess with this. Don't worry about it covering up your stuff. We'll fix that here in a second. Okay, you want it to go from the far left of your slide, which is really huge in this case, so I'm not worried about that, to the far right of your slide, and you want to cover that middle section. Now here's where the timeline goes, or you could click your object and send to back. Now you can either send to back, or if you don't have a whole lot going on, you can go in your timeline and drag it down. This is a lot faster to do. So you're going to want to send to back. That brings everything in the front. We're not done with this yet, so don't. I'm not too fond of that color, so let's try that one. So I like a light gray. This is really where that outline bothers me a lot, because what we're going to do here is my next favorite item, which is format shape. There's a hotkey to get to this too. So what we're going to do here is you're going to go to about 75 to 80% opacity. The reason being is we just want a hint of that color behind that question. And all that does is, at a quick glance, defines this section, and this section, and what yes no's go to which one. And it's just a lot easier to read. And on this, you also want to take into account any of your pictures that may have transparent backgrounds, and all that fun stuff. Okay, so do we like how the slide looks now? I think we're in a good spot. So next thing we want to do is create a button set. So what a button set does is, if you set it up to where this yes no, why is it not letting me select them both? Okay, so you need to select both one of the yeses and one of the nos on the same line. Oh, I think mine is going to just hate me today. You're going to then right click. You want to right click anywhere that there's not text. If there's text, then it tends to freak out and think you want to edit the text. Okay, then you're going to go to button set. You can either use this first button set or create a new set. I like to create a new set, so we're doing CMV1 because this is the first question on the CMV. Click yes, and then we're doing the same thing down the line with the next set of yes and no's. So, see, I'm in the text. Okay, button set, new set, CMV2. Okay, so I started in on what button sets do, and I did not finish. What a button set does is it defines within Storyline that only one of anything in a button set can be selected at one time. So that means that between these yes and no's, they can only select one at a time. So if they select the yes, then the yes is selected, and then if they go to say no, then it changes their selection from the yes to the no, and that way they only have one selected at a time. This will come into play a lot more whenever we're doing the quiz part of this slide. So this is where this setup comes into play a lot. So we're going to driver 1. We're almost done here. Mess with these text boxes so they get out of the way of our buttons so they're not messing us up here. Okay, we got them both selected. Button set. Driver 2. Okay, so now these are all selected as button sets. I'll show you what that means here. We're going to go to preview this slide. It should be selectable. If not, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Okay, so you see this is a button set. I've selected yes. You can see it's highlighted around as yes. I click on no, it deselects yes, and now no is highlighted. So you can, these are independent of each other, so that's why we're setting them up as all different button sets. That way you can have everything independent and nothing's going to overlap on itself, but you can only have one of the yes or no selected. And you can go through and say you don't like that highlight, the blue highlight. Say it's not enough. Okay, I want more than just a blue highlight to indicate that it's selected. Okay, so you'll go into states at the bottom. You'll click edit states. You'll click on the selected state that is created after you've set up the button sets. That is the important part, is this cannot be edited until after you've set up the button sets. That way it automatically does it. So say we want to go in here and we want, I don't know, we want the whole button to change colors. We want it to be teal, or we want the fill to be, I don't want to use green or red in this case because that indicates a correct or incorrect answer. And in this case, I really don't want to indicate whether or not they've selected the correct answer or not. So let's go in here and let's just do a neutral gray, a dark gray with that blue outline, okay? So we like that. We hit done. Okay, now we have what? 11 other buttons to do. There's a fast, easy way to do this. Okay, select the one that you have edited the states on. Double click on Format Painter. Format Painter is under Home. Double click on it. Okay, and then just select all of your buttons one by one. What this does, you'll notice in the bottom left, it's changing that state. Now, every one I click on is going to match, those two states are going to match that yes button that we've already determined was the main one we wanted to do. I tend to do this slowly because my storyline doesn't always like to keep up with me if I go too fast. And that's fine. So, you've gotten to the last one. All the states are correct. Just unclick your Format Painter and you're good to go. Now you can go in here and verify that your states are all correct, and you can hover over it and see it. Okay, so we have the questions, we have the ability to answer these questions, we have the button sets done. What's next? We need to set this up as a quiz, as a free-form slide. So go to Insert, go to Convert to Freeform. Now this is not a pick one. What we're going to do is pick many, because they're going to have at least, I can't count today, 6 questions answered on this one. Okay, so we go to Freeform, pick many, click OK. Storyline is going to do its thing. it's going to take you to this slide form. And what you're going to do is enter all of the choices in which a user needs to say. So every single one of these yes, no rectangles is what you're going to use, okay? So you want to make sure that you click the drop down, and every time you see a yes or a no, you're clicking it on here. Make sure you don't add anything else that's erroneous, like we don't want any of these other things. Yeah, they're all on the slide, but that's not what we want the user to click on. We want them to only be able to click these yes, no's, and we already have them set up as button sets, so this is not going to change anything on here. Okay, so now we have all of those as choices. We have not selected which ones are correct or which ones are not correct. So go back to the slide view. So we know that this first question, the answer is no. Okay, so what you're going to want to do here, select it here. And this is where your naming conventions come in. And then you're going to want to, I can't find the rename button, rename this to correct. A lot of people use underscores. I'm going to use underscores. Correct CMV. Okay, so we know the first one's no. We know the second one is going to be no. And I have a feeling I answered with all of these off the top of my head. They're all going to be no. And I did that backwards. I put correct CMV, and that's perfectly fine. So are we missing a pre-trip? This one's going to be another correct answer, so we're going to rename this one incorrect. Trailer. Okay, missing strap or tie down. This one is actually a yes. Okay. Correct trailer 2. This is just a ticketable offense, I believe, so we're going to say that's a no. Okay, and then this is not an out of service, because if they fully filled out their hours of service log, then they are correct. They're good. Correct underscore driver 2. Okay, so renaming all of those makes your form view so much easier to fill out, because now if it doesn't say correct, it's not a correct answer. So you can go in here and then just check mark everything that says correct. You should have 6 of them, so you can go back and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and we're good. So we go back to slide view. Okay, so now that we've created this as a form view, you have been given these correct and incorrect slides. Now, what we're going to do on this quiz is we're giving them unlimited tries. So their attempts are unlimited, because it's a 50-50 shot on each one. Now, I'm not always a fan of this form, mostly because I tend to default to a different layout, which I don't have on here, so we're going to roll with this one. Let's see here, because we want to edit this for our own feedback, right? I zoomed out, and I zoomed out way too much. Bear with me. Okay, with this, we cannot edit this outside square, right? That's not what we want to do. We want to insert a table in here. So since we give them unlimited tries, how are we going to tell the end user that which ones are, at least narrow down the list of which ones are correct and which ones aren't, right? We don't want to send them in the dark back into the question and tell them, hey, you've gotten so many right and so many wrong, or you've gotten some wrong, but I'm not telling you where. Okay, I don't want to be that mean. We want to be okay. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a table. Can you move over a little bit? Thank you. So this first column is going to be the section name. So we're just going to name it section. This next header is going to be number of correct. Okay, so we know the first section is the CMV. Second section is the trailer. Third section is the driver. Alright, so this is where variables come in. Now we are just going to do a simple number variable. I will go into variables at a later date on how I tend to use variables, but right now we're just going to be creating a variable for the section name. It's going to be a number, and it's going to have a value of starting at 0. Okay. Next one is driver. I know I probably skipped a section, and that's fine. So long as you have all 3 sections, or all the sections that you're looking at, you can add variables in at any time or space. Okay, so we have CMV, we have driver, we have trailer, and they're all defaulted at 0. Okay, so here's where your references come in. So we want to go into insert, reference. And what we want to reference is that first one. So it's going to come up like this. We don't touch that. That's how Articulate pulls which one it is. We say the reference of 2. So there's 2 questions in the CMV section, and whatever this is how many they've gotten correct. So we go to the trailer, we do the same thing. Trailer of 2. Now don't worry how long this is right here, because it's only going to be a single character width. It will shorten everything down, and I'll show you what that looks like once we get in here. Okay, so we do drivers, the last section, driver of 2. Okay, and right now I'm not worried about where this is, because I don't have a correct feedback layer for this. It's just going to be floating up here for now. It's still readable. The end user will read it, and I'll show you what my actual one that I'm using looks like after this, once I finish all of this and get all this in here so that y'all can see what it looks like. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is we're going to copy this table and place it on the correct layer as well. There we go. So that way they can see that they got all of them correct as well here. Alright, so we're going to go back to the quiz. Now, this is the easy way of setting up how this variable works. Okay? So, we're going to add a trigger. We want to adjust, the action is adjust variable, and we want to add a value of 1 to CMV This is where I'm going to have to cheat and look at what I set it up as. Okay, that's what I did. Okay, so I still have an object to create here. Okay, so how are we going to submit this? We need a submit button. So we want a button down here. Click to submit. Because again, as I've already forgotten, and I tend to forget a lot, we need a way to advance slides. So what this will do is we will change or create a trigger to submit interaction when user clicks rectangle 17. And this is rectangle 17 as stated here. If you have it selected when you create the trigger, it will automatically do that, so that's good. So we want to have that so we can submit the interaction. Then we can go in here and say adjust variable. Sorry, I got ahead of myself for just a moment. Adjust variable, or adjust variable, add value of 1 to CMV. When user clicks, this will be the submit button that we just created, so it's rectangle 17. If you go down and highlight it within the object box, you'll see it's selected with a red square. And then the condition, if, and we want an object, we want this one is selected. So what this does is we are only adding a value of 1 when the user submits this if they've selected the correct answer here. Now you will need to copy and paste and do this for every line. So you'll have 6 of these going. Okay? So we're going to copy, we're going to paste, and we want to change this state to be the other one. So we'll have adding of 2 if they have both of these corrected. So we're adding 1 if this object, which is this no right here, is selected, then we're adding 1, and if this correct answer here is selected, we're also adding 1. Okay, so you can easily copy and paste these even if you're using these for a different variable. You can click the drop down. We're going trailer next. Okay, so click the drop down, click trailer, and we're going to copy paste because that way we have less things to change here. Okay, trailer 2. So this is the 1 and 2 for the trailer, 1 and 2 for the CMV, and we're going to paste. We're going to change this variable to driver. So now we're dealing with the driver. So we're going to change this one here to correct driver. Okay, so there's 1, copy, paste, and there's the second one. Okay, so now we have a minimum of 2 for CMV, a minimum of 2 for trailer, a minimum of 2 for driver. Now, one thing about triggers, and this is the biggest thing that I have found that needs to happen. So object triggers will stack based on how you've created them. However, there are some that you want to have come before others. In this case, we want all of this variable adjustment to happen before it submits the question. So you select your submit and just click this down arrow until it's all the way at the bottom of this section. That way, when storyline goes through here, it takes this first trigger, determines does it need to do anything, second trigger, do I need to do anything, third trigger, do I need to do anything, fourth trigger, do I need to do anything, and so on until it gets to the last one. You don't want it to submit something before it's finished with this line, or you don't want it to go to the next page before it does something in your line. That is a big issue I've had before, and it has caused me so many headaches just to do. Alright, so we have these set up, we have the submit button set up, we have the question set up. So let's test this slide. Let's go to preview in this slide. Alright, so our buttons should be set up. Our button set is broken. We have changed that selection. So we will go in there and fix that. Here, that is just that format painter having issues, and that's totally reasonable. And it's okay. That's typically why I don't change that selection state because things like this do tend to break at least in my articulate. I don't know if it's anybody else's. Okay, so we want to answer these questions. First, we want to check the try again slide. So we want to make sure those variables are calculating correctly in that in slide. So we want to say, we know this is an incorrect answer. We know that's a correct answer. Okay, so we should have a 1 on this one. Okay, missing pre-trip. And we'll say yes, that's an incorrect, so we should not get a point for that. Missing straps for tying down a load. We'll say yes, we know that's a correct answer, so we should have a 1. Okay? We'll say that's out of service, and we'll say that's out of service. So we should get a 0 here, a 1 here, and a 1 here whenever we get to that try again slide. Okay? So we click submit, and that's exactly what we got. We got CMV, I got 1 question correct of 2. Trailer section, I got 1 question correct of 2. In the driver section, I got 0 of the 2 questions correct. So this allows the end user to know, oh, well, I need to figure out which one of those 2 is wrong. I got both the driver ones wrong, so I should automatically know what that is, and that's fine. In this case, I just didn't want to outright give them the answers because it's a yes/no question, and that was the request of the party who requested it. Okay, so we'll click on try again. One thing I did not set up on this, so we're going to go in here and select the correct ones. One thing I did not set up on here is you'll notice that's 3 of 2. That's 3 is higher than 2. How did we get there? We did not have a reset of the variable in our try again slide. So anytime you're dealing with number variables, it is very important to have a reset of the slide or reset of those variables. So what you can do here is you go into your incorrect or try again slide, and we're adding triggers to this try again button itself because the user is going to click this anyway. So we're going to adjust a variable. We're going to adjust the CMV variable, and this is where you want to set it to 0 when the user clicks that try again button. Okay, this is just going to reset your numbers, and it's going to give you less of a headache on there. And we're just going to copy and paste that twice because there are two other variables that we want to set to 0 as well, and that's that driver and that trailer. Okay, and then again, this is a trigger that does something, so we want to make sure that that goes at the very bottom. We want to set all of these values to 0 before we hide this layer. So now when I go in here and we preview this slide, okay, so now let's go in here. We'll go no, yes, 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 no, yes. Okay, so we should have this is correct, this is incorrect, this is incorrect, this is correct, this is correct, this is incorrect. So we should have 1 on each one of these. Okay, so look, all of them say 1. Now when we reset, let's say, oh, well, that one's obviously the wrong one, so I'm going to say yes on that one. We're going to say no on that one, and we're going to say no on that one. And now we're back to 0. So that means it reset our variables correctly, and we are now presenting the correct answers to the end user. Okay. All right. So now what I've found, and the reason why I do these in 3 slides is Rise. Once you submit something and you have a correct moving on type deal, it's not very apparent to the end user that you're done. So what I like to do is I like to just have a last slide that really locks in the, you gotta at least click to here before I tell before I tell Rise that it's finished with the statement that says, see if I can type. Okay, you may now continue, click the button below, or something to that extent. That may not be what I use in the end game, but that's just what I use to, hey, this is what this is it. You've already gone here, you've completed your thing, you've got the correct thing. It's gonna take you to the next slide here, as you can tell, and then your slide says you may now continue, click the button below. That's because the button below locks people into Rise from continuing until they have clicked that, which I will get into Rise in a completely different time. Right now I do not have capabilities of doing that. Okay, so let's start this from the beginning and check out our scene that we've done this today. And I do apologize if my dogs start barking. My husband just got home. Okay, so we got to the first slide. We clicked, we want to start it. We're going to click no, 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 yes, no, no, and then submit. So we got all of them correct. We're going to click continue. And then now we got the last slide that you may now continue and click the button. Okay. Alright, so that's how I've created this one. Let's look at the one that I actually created for our course. This one does not have questions on it, so I'm waiting on questions for them to give, provide for us. So this is the same thing we talked about earlier. Read each statement carefully and choose whether it would classify as yes, out of service criteria, or no, not considered out of service criteria, and then click here to start the quiz. You'll see I tend to automatically set variables at the very first slide because who knows what is going on. It's just easy to set them all at the beginning. Okay, then you go into this knowledge check slide. We have the truck and the questions with the yes no questions, the trailer questions with the yes no questions, the driver questions with the yes no questions, and a click to submit button. You'll see that I have all of those variables that we have talked about setting up. You'll see that there's 2 for CMV, 2 for trailer, 2 for driver. And then the submit for the pick many. This is what I was talking about the feedback layer being different. I have it set up like this. It's just, to me, it's a lot more streamlined and a lot more set. That one is just a leftover layer I didn't use. Once they click submit and they get it all correct, then they can click continue, and I say thank you. You may now click continue below. And this is how this one looks. We'll start from the beginning. So we wait on storyline. Okay, read each statement carefully. Out of service criteria or not considered out of service criteria. We have the click to start the quiz. These are set up as button sets, so you can see how it's selected. Same with this. Now, everything here is really broken. Because first question is no, and the rest of the answers are yes. So we'll show you how this looks whenever you click submit and something's wrong. You have the first section, we have both correct. Second section, you got one correct. Third section, you got one correct. So you want to try again. Now you can easily determine, hey, which one do I have incorrect on both of these. And you can click submit again. And then you can see all of them are right, and you have that's correct. Click continue, and then you may click continue below. At that point, it should unlock. Rise should unlock the button that's blocked. It's set up to say that they must complete the block above, which completing it means going through and getting this course completion completed past. And then this is what we, when we export to our LMS, that's what we use to trigger the courses complete within the LMS for them. Alright, that's everything I had for today. Please let me know in the comments if you would like to hear more, if there was something that you were unclear about. If you liked this video, please put a like button on it, subscribe. I plan on putting more of these types of things out here. This was my first one out here, so any positive feedback would be great. Anything that I could do better, please let me know. Alright, y'all have a great one.